let me begin with somebody I know well and worked with, and that's Daniel Weinschenker. He is here. Marianne McNair, she is there. And Sarah Davis, wow, nobody's in together. Sarah Davis is there, and they're here from StoryCenter. I think that's really all I have to say. So I'm going to turn it over to you. And once again, thank you for being with us today.
It is wonderful to see the room so full. The shortest distance between two people is a story. And it's clear by all of you who showed up. So thanks for coming. I'm Sarah Davis, and I'm the Associate Director with the Rocky Mountain Public Health Training Center, which is housed here on campus. We're part of the Center for Public Health Practice within the School of Public Health. And transgender health is important to public health, which is why we're involved. So we know many of you are in the clinical field and many of you are in the public health field. So this is a great opportunity to highlight the intersection between clinical and public health. So thanks again for being here today.
So I'm Marianne McNair, and I am from StoryCenter and work with Daniel. And there are a few other people in the room who work with us as well. And one is Heather Gerhardt with her mouth full right over there. I try to wait for that. And she helped a lot on this particular workshop. So I wanted to say thank you for being here. Again, taking your lunch hour to come do this is very, very much appreciated. Not only because you took the time to do it, but because these are such important stories and such a critical issue in today's world. And I do a lot of work at StoryCenter with all sorts of different audiences and a lot of trauma work. And I have to say that I have never, ever experienced a workshop that touched me as deeply as this one did. The stories themselves, the amount of trauma that happens from the time a person is born, almost every day, is so critical. And having the healthcare needs be met for these people is so important. And I think it's just really important for us to start the conversation and to learn about how people got where they are, who they are, how they should be treated, like everybody else in the world. And I'll let them speak for themselves and the stories as well. But I wanted to start with just telling you a little bit about how we got this workshop together. It was a coming together of the entities that you see up on the screen: Rocky Mountain Public Health Training Center with Sarah, Denver Health, Denver Prevention, and the Empowerment Program all came together to help make this happen. So all these groups of people got together to work on this 2-day digital storytelling workshop. And the goals we had were to really listen to each other as a group, to learn from each other's experiences, to remember things that had happened or stories that had happened to each of the participants, to promote personal reflection and growth, and to share all of those stories and share the emotions and share the power in the room. This is basically how StoryCenter works with every workshop we do. We come together as a group and people share their stories and find empowerment, I think, in hearing their voices for the first time, maybe say a story. I haven't ever told a story in a digital storytelling workshop or even to the staff where I didn't completely break down, because there's something about saying it for the first time and hearing it from the outside coming in that's so impactful. But getting groups together to convene to do this work is so much more meaningful than working one-on-one with somebody. There's value in shared experiences and learning from other people's stories. Here's a quote that I often like: "The purpose of a storyteller is not to tell how you think, but to give you questions to think upon." And so I think the power of story, especially in today's age, is so obvious in terms of whether it's marketing and you have a story and on an ad on TV, or if it's in education, helping people relate to the information that they're being told. If it's done through story, we tend to remember. If we're given facts, we tend to forget. And so when we think about, I have to tell you that almost every single day since this workshop, which was in August, I think about every one of these stories. I'm not just saying that. They live inside me, they're important to me, and I think about them over and over again, and I keep learning from them. So at StoryCenter, just as a little background, and you know who we are, we were founded in 1993. We're based mainly in Berkeley, but we have a Denver office that Daniel, who you met, started. What was it, 15 years ago? A long time ago. He's getting older. Yeah, a lot of stories ago, for sure. I've been working with StoryCenter now for 10 years. I think this is my 10th year. And I started my career as a museum educator and was often tasked with telling other people's stories. I worked at a history museum. And so I was telling what it was like to be a miner in early Colorado, what it was like to be a Ute Indian in Colorado, what it was like to be a cowgirl on the plains. And I told all of these stories, and I had a great time researching and telling the stories. But when Daniel came to me the first time and said, wouldn't you love to have people tell their own stories? I thought, wow, you know what, that's a really good idea. And so we had an exhibit on Italians in Colorado, and we did a workshop where we brought different Italian people from Colorado to come in and tell their stories. And they were simple stories. They weren't really complex, emotional, heavy stories. They were, this is how we celebrated Christmas every year at our house, at my grandparents' house. This is what we ate. This is what we drank. These are the gifts we gave each other. And there is so much in that, that little bit of information that complemented all of the labels on the wall. So all of the information about statistics and neighborhoods that people lived in and where they moved after World War II up to Arvada from the bottoms of the Platte River. All of that stuff was on the labels, but the personal stories were so much more impactful. So we've been doing, as this says, over 20,000 digital stories, but you know, we've had that number up there for, 5 years. So I'm gonna say we have a lot more than that. But we do work all over the world and in different languages and when it's needed. So the areas that we focus on at StoryCenter are public health and human services. All of these things you see on the screen in front of you, I don't need to read that to you. But we work with a wide variety of people, anywhere from these groups to open workshops where people just come in and tell a digital story and learn how to make a story. It's usually a 3-day process. With this particular group, we ended up doing a 2-day process where people came in, told their stories, worked on them and crafted them down to 300 words. And then we recorded them. And then they gave us images to use and we put their stories, their digital pieces together. So we'll show you those in a little bit. These are little clips from each one of the stories that you're about to see. And I don't know, there's something about just looking at the still images that takes me into the stories, because I have questions with every single story, or every single picture I see. I have a lot of questions and I want to know the answers, and we're about to show you those. But before we move on to see the stories, are there any questions about how any of this works or how we come together to do this work? Okay, so we'll just go ahead and look at the stories.
Born in North Brooklyn to an African-American family in the 50s, I learned early on that there were consequences to being different. Compliance was always mandatory. My parents were both embarrassed and intolerant of me. Love of me was only within the lines of acceptability. I was probably, just as they would say, too headstrong. I didn't change as they wanted, mainly because I didn't understand that I needed to change. My Christmas gift when I was 6 was my announcement to my father's friends that I was not a girl. A knowingness that was as near to me as the air around me. They didn't see me as I saw myself. This is my problem. And being a fag wasn't an acceptable part of that definition. But my need to emulate my mother openly was discouraged in a continuous regimen of acts of embarrassment, punishments, and beatings to steer me back in line. Word grew within the community about my existence. I returned to school one afternoon. My father was drunk, a bit uncommon for him. He brought me into his bedroom and instructed me to put a big black plastic bag over my head and over my body. I tried to leave, but he locked the door. He shoved me to the floor a few times. I didn't understand. Each time I tried to remove the bag, he hit me. Again and again in the face. Suddenly, my mother was in the room. She stopped my father. I was crying and ran out, but it clawed at me for a week before it hit me, and I was devastated. He didn't want to be able to see me because it was easier. This hurt in a way that told me I had lost any hopes of ever having the love for him I had always sought. When my doctor of 8 years told me to undress, I complied. When she returned, it was with a new male records aide. All was okay until she stated I had not undressed for the exam. So I responded with a willingness to comply, but asked, could the aide leave? There was a sharp look of disapproval and the comment, come on now. There's nothing he hasn't seen. And they both waited. Apparently, my compliance is still mandatory.
Waiting in the doctor's office as usual, and entered a new PA. There was an awkward silence as the computer loaded Epic. The first thing that showed up bold were transgender, gender dysphoria, and polycythemia. And then she finally made eye contact, and a big grin crossed her face, asking what I was here for. I said, my sinuses. With a slight pause, she said, I see you're transgender. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions? I have a transgender patient. He and his partner are coming to see me today, and I was hoping to ask a few questions. My pleasure. I've gotten used to answering questions for people. She asked what she should know that maybe only another transgender person would know that would be good insight for her patient. In a split second, I flashed to a time when I received my first pap smear as a male. Sitting in the waiting area with pregnant women looking at me as well as the staff. Then the doctor asked me in front of everyone why I was there to see him, and his face was turning red. It was like I was the freak show. I told the doctor to tell her patient to expect about 7 years of puberty because that isn't really discussed. So getting a good understanding of what takes place includes natural changes in the human body as a typical teenager would experience, like increased hair growth everywhere, voice change, body fat distribution, and so on. And how the first year is the most intense. I am sure every man remembers puberty, wanting to fuck everything that moves, raging hormones, feeling sexually out of control. The partner will have to be ready to hump like bunnies. I also remember that the changes don't happen overnight. You won't immediately have a mustache, a deep voice, and grow a dick and balls. A few years ago, I ran into that awkward OBGYN at a fundraiser. He came up to me and said, "I've watched you over the years, and you look good." I knew what he was trying to say. It was at least a step in the right direction.
I went to see my doctor. Back up against the wall, he sat staring at his computer screen. He looked at my medicine list. He told me that he knows many other transgender people and that there shouldn't be any problems. I think to myself, my life is nothing like other trans people, and nor is their lives anything like mine. I was at home one night when me and my mother got into a fight about the way I identify. I was only 13, and I was so upset that I ran out of the house forgetting my code. To tell you the truth, all I really wanted was just to get away. I ran over to Colfax Avenue. I was alone, cold, and hungry. I could feel the eyes of some of the passing vehicles watching me. And then his car with a black guy pulls up next to me. "Want a ride?" he shouts over to me. I was still so angry at my mom and so damn cold. I stepped over telling him, "I'm not what you think." He waved me to get in, so I did. He drove about a block, turned into a dark alley, and parked next to some abandoned apartments. My heart began to pound as my throat tightened. He told me to come with him so he could get some money from his apartment. Before I could say anything, he struck me hard in my face. I remember falling to the ground. He kicked and stomped me. And then it happened. I begged for my life, and I was in vertigo from when he kicked my head. I just knew he was gonna kill me, and I wondered how long it would take. Then I heard his car start up, and he was gone. I crawled on my hands and knees, blood pouring from my head. I woke up in the hospital with doctors, nurses, and my angry mother. She told me it was my fault, that I shouldn't have gone out there. Upon being released from the hospital, I asked to go to the bathroom. I found the stairs and headed up to the second floor and jumped. I'm only here today because I hit a fence on the way down. I took the prescriptions from the doctor and walked out of his office.
Even if my life was in danger, I wasn't ever going back there. It's November 2015. I remember looking out the window in the exam room. It's snowing. It's cold. I'm at Denver Health, alone in a room with my doctor. As I get undressed to get in bed, head down, ass up, I'm feeling vulnerable and exposed. Is my ass ashy? I'm not prepared or ready for what this woman is about to do to me. She is putting on gloves as she's talking, and then she's shoving inside me with a metal cylinder. I'm saying, "This hurts, can we stop?" My very own doctor of the past few years tells me, "Breathe. You should be used to this." And I'm back in 1984 at Children's Hospital. The doctor is shoving a very long Q-tip inside my pee-pee. About a week later, I'm notified I have chlamydia, and the white peoples via a social worker, child advocate, and police are taking me home again. I can hear mommy saying, what happens in this house stays in this house, and I knew it was all bad. This cylinder inside my rectum right now is excruciating. I wet myself. She continues to probe, and I'm saying over and over, I want to stop. And she insisting this would only take a few more minutes. In this moment, I'm no longer a woman of 40 plus years. I am that girl of 12 until she is finished poking, probing, and prodding around inside of me. I dressed fast and not slow and walked as fast as I could to the women's room. I sat on the stool bleeding and pushing what this woman said and done to me down the stool. Sitting here, I'm thinking, how can I not be a victim? And so, in November 2015, my journey to advocate for myself and others began.
Laying in my bed inside a prison cell in pain, I had just melted down my estrogen so I would be able to inject hormones directly into my chest. I wanted breasts immediately. I had waited long enough. My dad told me when I was 12 that I would have to wait until I was 18 to make an adult decision about being on estrogen. I couldn't possibly tell the prison guard that I had injected hormones into both sides of my chest, so I dealt with the pain. The prison guard did a welfare check, knocking on my cell door, waking me up because I had fully covered my head with the itchy wool blanket so that my sobs of pain wouldn't be heard over the intercom in my cell. After about 2 weeks, I started noticing my anthills developing. The torture continued. Finally, there were results because other inmates were chanting, "Estrella has chi-chis." Certainly something that I had never heard before. I was determined to grow 34Cs. My rosebuds were developing and I was truly on the road to having my body match my heart. I woke up to excruciating pain. It was around 2 a.m. I was sweating. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up to go flush the needle down the toilet so that I wouldn't get charges or questioned about where I had gotten the syringe. But as I stood up, I collapsed to the floor. I woke up seeing doctors stare down at me, asking me, what did I take or where did I get it? They had initially assumed that I fell because of some sort of drug use. Instantly, I admitted what I had done. My t-shirt was lifted and the nurse's look told me that I was in trouble. She stated that I needed to have incisions made on both sides of my breast to drain them. I was scared, but there was no way I was going to allow them to scar my perfect breast. I cried in pain. The nurse told me that if I didn't sign for her to make the incisions, my health would be in danger. So I signed. Today, I'm in a relationship healthy, and free. I went to buy a bra last week, a 34C.
For watching those stories. And now, if you two want to come up, anybody else would like to take questions from the audience? So we have Star, Sasha, and anyone else if you'd like to, who, other storytellers. But go ahead, and I think they're gonna have you sit right here, and you can introduce yourselves, and then maybe talk a little bit about how you made your story and your process.
My name is Star, and okay, no, awesome. So the reason why I chose to make the story is because I'm now in a situation where I'm helping the youth, transgender youth, and I want them to know that help is available, and you don't have to do illegal hormones illegally the way I did to try to develop quick, instant. And so the reason why I chose to do the story is because it's important that we do it the right way, because when we don't take care of ourselves, then we expect it. Then how can we expect the healthcare to help us when we're not being on the up and up with ourselves? And so that's why I chose to do the story. I think it's important that we build bridges with the trans community, because a lot of the transgender, the youth that I work with, they choose not to go to medical for help because they feel like they're getting not getting the attention that they feel that they need, and they come off as having an attitude because of dealing with the everyday situation, waking up and you feel like, I am feeling good about myself, and then when you go to a medical appointment, then your pronouns are, you're mispronounced, and then all of a sudden they don't want anything to do and they walk out. And this has happened to me, which is the reason why I went and found illegal hormones and eventually ended up in jail. But doing it illegally because I didn't have to deal with any medical person judging me or mispronounce, not going by my pronouns and my preferred name. And that's very important to us, because a lot of times it doesn't have to be a trans person. It could be someone by the name of Elizabeth, just wants to be called Liz. That's your preferred name. And if that bothers you, then that should be respected. So this is the reason why I did the story, is just to try to help the trans community that I'm working with now to be able to do it the right way.
Sasha, and I guess my reasoning for wanting to do this, because I get more people asking me questions about my sexuality. I was gay, and it really bothers me because it's a whole total different thing. Gender, and you're associating gender with sexuality, and the whole truth is they're completely separated. I wanted to talk to people about my story, and I threw the fact that I was 13 at the time that this happened to me was because I was not interested in nobody. Nobody, none. And even more so after the events of that day. That day scared me so bad that I ended up actually just trying to be what the world wanted me to be, I remember just taking everything off and trying to hide from the world. Chronically suicidal, 42 years. Try to find any way and every way. People look at us and they think it's a choice. I would have never woke up one day and marginalized part of a community that's so never chose not be accepted in certain schools or to never chose that. Tell me it was my choice. I kind of laugh at it because
about the medical profession, Dasha, and how you've been received.
I mean, now I say that it's still up and down because I was seeing this doctor for about 5 years. And when I came in and he said that, it just made me feel like you're judging me. You're making me feel like I'm the last person and I need a whole total different. My life is completely different than that person. So don't assume that just because, I'm transgender, that it's going to be a cakewalk and that you're going to be able to just take care of this real quick. My not wanting to open up was my not wanting to get undressed, my being nervous that it was a male, my just all these things. In fact, if I can kind of share that, I'm actually HIV positive, and when I was told that that was a possibility, I was so scared to go to the hospital because not only being trans positive, I just knew I was gonna catch it. I just knew I was gonna catch it. So I decided that I wouldn't, and I actually went so many years without even in a check until where I collapsed and I had full-blown AIDS. So I was on my way out the door. And finally I got care. I was kind of forced into getting the care. And even through that beginning part of it, I was so nervous that I had always just felt like, look, just let me die. Just let it happen, In fact, I would often try to find ways out because I just knew my life was over anyway. So why spend your time hating me? Why spend your time pretending, I guess, how I felt, like you had some sort of care when in your head, you're thinking all of these negative things. Today, I mean, I guess things are a lot better. I work with PFAC, so Patient Family and Patient Family Advisory Council here at UC Health. And my whole thing is, I just feel like people in general, my new dedication is about humanity. It's about every single one of us is different. And we should be accepted for our differences. And everybody has a problem. So when somebody looks at me, problem, and they only just throw trans in front of everything, I look back at them and I know that they have problems too. And I choose to love this person, even though this person is hating me. Because I believe that I need to be okay with myself. And loving everyone is going to help.
For me, you know, healthcare has been amazing for me. I'm just helping others get the care that they need. I was in a car accident and I had concussion and I couldn't think, I couldn't remember things, but I knew who I was and I knew, but I was worried more so about the doctors that were helping me, what they thought of me more than my, you know, what I was going through. And I remember waking up thinking that I was going to do something in life, and that was to help the trans community be comfortable with who they are, be secure in who they are to the world, because I think it's just important that we have things like this to bring knowledge to people, to make everyone aware that everyone's somebody, and regardless of their transitioning or whatever you're going through their life, we have a purpose, and my purpose here is to reach as many, not just trans people, but anyone that spark from suicide or, you know, anything negative. I don't know, I think it's just so important that we go to our appointments. We just want to be respected like everyone else. And when we don't get that respect, we have this wall that comes up. And then when we see the doctor or the vital sign nurse, and they have mispronounced us, then we have this attitude. And then it always said, oh, transgender people have this attitude. It's because each day we have somebody somewhere saying something about who the hell I am. And I'm not here to tell you who I am. I know who I am, but you need to know that I'm very vocal. I speak my mind, and I'm not going to disrespect you. However, you need to know I'm secure in who I am. And when I go to the medical appointment, we're not there to try to flirt or hit. You may be cute, of course, but we're going to make sure that we're there to get our help. And so we're not in the streets getting illegal hormones in high-risk situations to avoid, you know, someone that we feel that's in trust.
A little bit more about your job and even more than your job, how you connect to the transgender community.
Yes, so I'm a programs manager now for It Takes a Village, and I program 2 groups, Transaction and Sisters in Spirit. And Sisters in Spirit is a group with transgender women and cis women to bond together to do outreach in the community, to get people to focus on high-risk activity, to try to bring the activity down, and wherever's high risk in the community, to get help in that area, to get them resources and health care that they need, that they don't realize that they really have. So a lot of people in our communities that we go into each day, we go 2 to 3 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and I go and I try to outreach anybody that will listen, especially the trans community, homeless community, or anyone, just to give them that spark and say that we care, because that's all it took for me to turn around to say, you know what, someone cared about me, and I made a whole turnaround, got my life together, and have an amazing life that I never thought I would have. So that's why in my story it says a straight dream, because I've always dreamed to be married and, you know, have my own everything that I earned and worked hard for. So that's what I do to encourage the youth and people in the community to want, you know, that kind of happiness in their lives as well, so they can turn around and reach out to other people. So I'm really passionate about it, and each day just makes me happy, because I think about all the people that I've ran into on the street that I could understand and communicate with, where it's not about just the textbook, because they get a chance to see somebody that went through the same thing, homelessness and everything right along with them, and then to come from that and learn from it, and to say, this isn't going to happen to me anymore, and this is the person I am today, and this is the person I will be from here on. Important that we have people in the community to.
This is why it's so important to have your stories to take around and help educate people. Want to say something else?
Yeah, I also wanted to add one quick thing. You know, when I did decide to transition, which was about 3 years ago, I start to realize that things have changed. In my mind, I start saying, oh, these things change. There's nobody else that's going to do that again. That's not going to happen again. Well, as of March 3rd, this year, I was that victim again. I guess the whole resilient thing, this just continuously just moving forward, and it's just giving me more power, just more power to also about those kind of crimes too, and to be more aware of.
When I heard of this, I reached out to her and I called her, not knowing if she was going to answer or anything, and because I hadn't seen her in any of the group. And when I heard of this, I called her and she told me that this was happening, and I was like, this is not okay. We're going to do something about it. And we got in contact with you. And she was, stable and doing what she needs to do at the hospital.
Yes, we have a question.
Yeah, hi. My name's Stephanie. Thank you for sharing your stories and being here today. I was just wondering if you had any specific suggestions for healthcare professionals that are meeting with a transgender patient for the first time on how to better communicate with them and connect to just make that experience better for them.
First, I would like to say that when you meet a transgender person, from the very beginning, when you get the file, the folder, when they're registering, they tell them their preferred name. This is the most important beginning of everything, because this sets the tone of how the thing's gonna go. Usually they will leave if they're not using the correct name that they prefer, because when you're sitting in a crowd of people and you feel like you're just feeling really good, you got yourself, and then they come and call you your birth name. This tears you down. This attitude comes up, and I'm telling you, it ruins the whole thing, because they're not going to give you the truth. Now they don't feel they could trust you to tell you the whole truth about what's going on with them. Now they're going to feel, and I know from experience because this has happened to me, and even though they don't see a face, they're just calling the name from the file. But the preferred name, they go by the preferred name, and it's not against the law to be called by your preferred name. The billing name is your birth name, of course, and we understand that, but to be called your birth name in front of everyone is really insulting, and it's like being victimized all over again by being torn down for who you are, and people just not respecting that. So from the beginning, I think that's important that you have that with your established with the people that you work with. And for the most part, it has been going great as far as that goes, but I think that's just important. And another thing is also when you're when they're telling you what's going on, really listen to what the person is saying, because a lot of times they're masking what really is going on. I know a lot of trans people who wear binders to cover up, and they're not sharing that because they're in a lot of pain, and so a lot of times more pain than we're actually trying to let you know, because we're already feel embarrassed that, okay, we're a trans person trying to tell you what's going on. And even though we were born male, we're projecting, I don't know, it's like, I really can't, like everyone, well, not everyone, but they expect us to be harder, feel like tough because we were born male. But regardless, we still have normal feelings like everyone else, and a lot of times we're hiding that because we don't downplay how we really feel, because we just don't want to look like crazy or something. If I make sense.
I think at the end of the day, you get somebody that comes into your office and they're identifying and satisfied or even happy with their much as anyone else. You know, it shouldn't be that hard for that given, you know, the basic respect. You see how I'm expressing myself. If you have questions, ask me for my pronouns. Problem can do that. But I really do exactly what you're saying when it comes to the name. Yeah, you know, you want to establish trust with your patients. Something in the very beginning. Trust. If it does, it may be incredible. Get it back, you know. And then it can also put that patient also using the name. If you come out and you use the birth name, come out into the waiting room, and there's all these people there. You've got a few people who are just looking and trying to figure it out. Then you got people that really are not even caring. But you never know which element is the dangerous element there once they now can definitely say for sure.
Another thing is with youth, I think it's important that the youth that I've worked with, they've shared with me how once you do mispronounce a person, it's okay, apologize, but move on. Because if you apologize and you keep, oh, I'm so sorry, now you're making me feel like I feel uncomfortable. Now I'm really not going to share with. But if it happens, we make mistakes, and I tell the trans people that I work with that it happens. When it does, allow the person to say, I apologize. You know, I didn't have a visual face. You know, when you pick up the file and you see the name initially, and you know, and they don't pitch it, accidents happen. But when you apologize, just move on, because when you dwell on it, it makes it so much worse for us. It makes it seem like now I made a big issue. Now I'm not going to get the care that I need because we're focused on my pronoun. And now I'm going to have this attitude. It's just going to be awkward. So that's what they've shared with me most about, is just we know that accidents happen. And
great. Thank you.
Can you? So my question is this.
Yes, I know.
Want me to sing something? My question is this. I'm gay myself, and I'm an older guy, so I dealt with lots of that hate and stuff. Now you guys in our community are the ones that is the focus of it. How do you deal with the haters? You know, how do you deal with the haters that want to hurt you because, you know, you give them fear for what's inside of themselves? How do you deal with that?
From the time that I was 13 when that happened to me, I went and started training in martial arts to defend myself. I have 14 black belts, and I'm not going to be a victim again.
As for me, well, let's just say when I was younger, I knew I was a trans person at a young age. My parents just let me be when I was younger. They called me Gigi when I was younger because I didn't want to be a boy or a girl. But I would say this, when I was 17 years old, in order for me to get on the movie where it says prison, when I was in prison, is because I was in a relationship with a guy. I was very passive, and I was in a relationship with him, and I thought I was in love with him. And as a trans woman, you feel like you have to do extra to keep the guy because you're not able to give him children, or so you have to do extra. And I was in a relationship with a guy, and I found out that he was cheating on me, and I felt like I just gave him everything. I mean, I saw no wrong in my eyes for him, and I made a bad decision. When he hurt me here, I knocked at the door, and when he answered, I stabbed him in the face. And the world needs to see what he did to me. They need to know that what happened here, they need to see that. And I went to prison, sold in. And I'm not a violent person, but I felt like I gave this guy everything. And I ended up in prison, but I fought and fought. And I ended up getting out because I was a juvenile. And they charged me as an adult and put me in prison. And I fought to get in there. I fought in prison to get in law books and understand what I need to do. I felt it was unfair. And they gave me a 50-year sentence. I fought and got out of prison after following an illegal sentence because they did not charge me as a juvenile. I'm not saying that violence is the thing to do, but this is what happens when you try so hard to be who you are as a person and you're so passionate about it. And when someone comes and stirs up and mistreat you, and we act out. And I'm not a violent person by nature, but in this situation, I just felt the world needed to see that. And so this is why today I think it's important that I give back to my community to say that violence is never the answer, because after that, I end up being in an abusive relationship, drugs, homeless, all for another guy, because I just wanted to be loved, be accepted for who I am. And now, being 49, I know who I am. I know what I'm about, and I know I'm confident in what I want in my life, and no guy, no relationship, no nothing is gonna come in between my being happy as a trans person and reaching out to the community so they don't have to go through that and express violence into getting respect from people who has no idea that you have the capability to do this when you're in a situation of being hurt or mistreated or anything like that. So I think it's important that we have that help from the community.
I think we have time for one more question. If anyone would like to ask any of our guests.
I have one more quick question. That is, I think it's really difficult for a lot of people who don't understand what trans is to understand the difference between cisgender, gay, and trans, and they mix things up. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between being gay and being transsexual, and I know that there are all sorts of things in between, but if you could just talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so of course, cis women is same. That's same birth women. So we don't say natural women because then it makes us feel like we're not natural. But cis women are women who are born with us, as women at birth. And trans women are women who identify as women, but was born with male parts, but we identify as women. Not expression or sexuality, is identity. Gay men are just men who are interested and attracted to men, and they have no desire to transition, even though they can identify with femininity, but they have no idea. They have no don't want to be on hormones or transitioning in operation.
Thank you. I have to say, just in closing, thank you all for showing up, especially you. Always, the two of you always show up. Thank you all.